Hi, everyone. Today we're going to talk about evidence-based entrepreneurship and lean innovation, the history of the methodology, the people behind it, and the process that has been empowering entrepreneurs for more than 10 years, building and training people that are developing deep tech companies, basic entrepreneurship companies, social innovation, uh, basically around the globe. Most of the users of the methodology and the instructors and the Sherpas are based in Asia, America, and Europe. But as far as we know, it's been used even in places like Africa or Australia. So with no further ado, let me start the story where it comes from. One of the first questions of a group of entrepreneurs at the end of the 90s was, how can we increase positive impact in the world? This was a group of people that had a very profound social conscience and responsibility, and this is basically what triggered all the story that I'm gonna share with you. Boosting social capillarity, empowering people, and making it contagious, and solving complex world challenges were one of the most important objectives and visions that they shared together. And they wanted to use knowledge and technology to be more effective in tackling those challenges and solving these needs. And that's what started this journey. And as Peter says, when you're thinking about having a positive impact in the world, the easiest way to have that positive impact is helping a billion people. So one of the steps that we took together, this was in 2000, was to start thinking about the connections between purpose, science, and business, and start understanding what the better way could be to develop ventures that could better the world. And that was the basic step, the basis of our need to help others and start working towards another way to solve things, to sort things out, and to start helping a lot of people help themselves. That was basically the philosophy that we were looking at. We started basically making a big scan of different methodologies and tools that were used for almost anything. Back in those days, there were no business incubators, at least not as they are today. There were no known methodologies. The lean startup movement had not even started. This is 10 years before that, basically. So we started talking about the different things that we as entrepreneurs were using all over the world. We were scattered all over the place. Some of us were living in the States, others in Japan, others in Russia, in the UK, in Mexico, in Chile. And we started throwing on the table basically everything that we had used before to push our ventures forward, to help other entrepreneurs and to develop businesses as quickly as possible. And that basically led us also to kickstarting conversations at different points in history with the guys that you know and you've read and that we worship, which are the guys that basically have changed the way in which we do business 2020. We kept on working with that, and we ended up packing a huge amount of methodologies and innovation tools, and we ended up calling it evidence-based entrepreneurship and lean innovation. When we came up with this huge number, by this time we had this huge folder that we were sharing together, and not all of us knew how to use it because there was so much information in there. So we basically started talking to friends from different universities that had very specific methodologies in order to pick, basically hand picking the best parts of each of the tools and each of the methodologies. And this was a long process that took us more than a couple of months, and that was basically the way in which we were able to create this thing as we know it today. The process has been long, as you can see. It's taken us 20 years to nurture and to mature. We started, as I was saying, a group of 40 people in 2000, working on different books and formats. We created a school for entrepreneurs that we called Fomento Geek, which basically means promoting geekness. And from then on, we started supporting entrepreneurs, especially in Latin America, but then growing to other places. We opened offices in Palo Alto, California. We opened offices in Vancouver, in Tokyo. We were trying to connect the Latin American ecosystem with what was happening in the most advanced ecosystems in the world. And that shared folder that we created in 2005 ended up becoming a handbook for us. By then, we more than doubled the group of custodians of the methodology. It didn't have a name at that time. We started developing cohorts for company building. We understood that we were working with deep tech entrepreneurs. They had a profile closer to scientists than to entrepreneurs. So the typical infrastructures that we used to support entrepreneurs, like incubators at the time, didn't work. So we started creating these cohorts that ended up creating this name, company building. By the time, we just called them incubators. And by 2015, we created this thing that we called the Business Model Toolbox, which is the first time that we understood that we had a powerful thing there that we wanted to share with the world. We started using it with companies to do corporate innovation. We started sharing it with universities. We started training people, basically, I would say, in Asia, in America, and in Europe. And that's when, in 2017, evidence-based entrepreneurship and lean innovation was born as a name for this process of different methodologies that we created for the last 17 years. 2020 for us has been amazing. It has obviously been very challenging for everybody, and also ourselves, but it has allowed us to come together as a group and to achieve amazing things. We created a company builder, for example, for the 49th cohort, with more than 300 people in the teaching team and almost 200 teams that we've been helping since July. And it has shown us that we not only are part of a great group of thinkers and developers, but also a great group of community of instructors and people that are willing to go the extra mile for the entrepreneurs. And that is basically the better way. EBELI now is a methodology that is very simple to apply. You just have to trust the process. And it takes only very specific steps so that you can build up what you're trying to achieve. And as you will be listening and watching during the presentation, what we are doing here is trying to boost all the efforts of people that are trying to better the world. The basic process in which we start has been compacted into a 9-week process. That's basically 2 months. And as you heard before, it not only accompanies the entrepreneur, but it includes almost, I would say, every information valuable from business books, from entrepreneurial books, from innovation books, and the different tools that you probably already know and use. And I would say that one of the greatest advantages of EBELI is that it is a methodology that has not only been developed by entrepreneurs, but it's also being taught by entrepreneurs, a group of people that have already walked the walk and have already been successful at that, and have already had their big failures and learnings by failing well and failing forward. And that has been probably one of the biggest changes in EBELI from other methodologies that have been written only in libraries or in labs. By now, we've probably trained a bit more than 100,000 people in different continents and different industries and sectors. We have worked with people that are working in space, in mining, in oil, in energy. We have also worked with groups that are working with specific types of entrepreneurs, like pushing for social innovation, helping gender equality, and we have even applied it with artisans. And what's been amazing of EBELI is that we've seen it work for building deep tech companies, but also for creating entrepreneurs at very early stage, even teenagers and young kids, and it has worked fine. What we're trying to do with the methodology basically is to lower the number of strikeouts, and we want to increase the number of base hits and home runs. And by doing that, we base most of the process on customer discovery, the way in which we improve the odds, in which we de-risk the projects, is by changing the curve. And that allows us to reduce risk at a very interesting percentage. The numbers that we have so far of more than 5,000 projects that have gone through the process and more than 400 successful ventures is that we help them reduce the risk, and we help them create more base hits and some other home runs. But how does it really work? And this is probably the biggest question of all. Usually when you're starting a venture, what people try to do is just go to the desk, start doing research in the computer, and just imagining and hypothesizing stuff, because people are so intelligent, I've been there myself, that they're gonna find the best solution and go to the market, meaning that they're gonna have a successful venture, and that's gonna give them cash flow enough to develop facilities for the next venture. So they go back to the desk for the second time. That's gonna be a change maker. It's gonna be a money magnet, and that's gonna allow us to retire early, right? And most of the times what we see also is that we have these hockey stick forecasts with so many details and decimal precision that it's very funny to see when the entrepreneur is proposing a project that hasn't been launched to the market. So there's no way that they can have so much specific information about the project. And this has been shown, I guess, many times all over the world. It's happened to me many times, and I would say to all of my friends that have started a venture or have been entrepreneurs at some point, they always find the wall. And we call it, I learned this in ICOR from the National Science Foundation in the States, we call it the Tyson's law. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And that punch in the face is usually when you do the customer discovery and you're lucky enough before developing the company, even before developing the first MVP, when you learn that your idea is wrong, and then the market and your customer has a different idea of the need that they have and of the solution that they want. So what we ended up doing is basing all the entrepreneurial process on experimental innovation. And this is a huge difference because it's not really about ideas, it's about testing the ideas. And the process starts with understanding that you are the easiest person to fool, that confirmation bias is your worst enemy as entrepreneur, And that's why you want to avoid at all costs the unkonks. You need to know as much as you can, and you also need to know that you will never ever know as much as you can. And this is important because you need to understand that there's a lot of information out there from things that you do not know, that you don't know, that are going to kill you as an entrepreneur. This is the typical matrix that you see when you're starting a process, probably in a business school, studying an MBA or something like that. But the reality of the blocks of this matrix is so different from what you can see here. The real dimensions of what I do not know, that I don't know, and the different squares are so different from what I know that I know. And this is the process, the first step that you need to take. You let it sink in and you start asking the questions. And that is going to allow you to have a more positive feedback and understanding of what I know that I don't know and what I don't know that I know, allowing you to have a smaller space of the unkonks, which is, again, probably the riskiest, the most relevant part of the customer discovery, implying that you could even not only break, but never get off the ground. The customer discovery process created by Steve Blank and Bob Dorff is based on the scientific method. And we create the process based on the phenomenon and then formulating hypotheses. This is basically educated guesses that we formulate, and then we go experiment. We go find the people that we believe are the ones that are going to be interested in the process that we're creating, in the service that we're trying to develop, on the product that we're trying to launch to market. And then from the learnings that we get there, we modify the hypothesis, we formulate new hypotheses, and we repeat that cycle until we're very comfortable with the patterns that we're seeing in the process. This would be basically the planning that comes before the plan. As you know, not many years ago, business schools were pushing a lot for the business plans. Now we've found a better way to do it, and that's working on quicker tools that allow us to move forward easier with less friction and develop a decision-making process that is a lot more accurate and a lot faster than what we had before when we created this huge 100-page documents with Excel spreadsheets and a lot of information that, again, were only hypotheses from what we knew at that point in time. How do we look now for the business model? We try the problem first, and this is the basis of any kind of product, of service, of company that you want to launch to the market. What you need to understand is the problem-solution fit, because you need to identify and validate the problem or need in the market that enough people care about. And this is crucial, because if you do not have critical mass to what you're trying to launch, then it's not going to work. And then after that, you can take the second step, which would be trying the solution. And this is important, because if you validate the problem first and then the solution, you're going to be able to look for the product market fit as a second step. And then you can start thinking about creating that product or service that meets the customer problem or need. And that is going to be crucial, because that's going to give you the information that you need to get in order to define if the business that you're trying to build is worth doing or not. Finally, and once you understood that, you can take the third and final step, which is going to be looking for the business model fit, allowing you to continue moving forward, building the MVP and launching your product. It's a process, and you cannot skip any step in there, because it's very likely that you might fail. So based on the scientific method, you're going to harvest all the data from the customer discovery, and that should allow you to de-risk the project. Again, The numbers are very impressive. 99.7% of all documented ideas fail. And that's the reason why 70% of VC investments fail. And that's why we need to do the customer discovery as the basis of evidence-based entrepreneurship and lean innovation. EBELI promotes that you understand the market first and that you build second. And by doing that, you're de-risking, see the numbers, from 61 to 79% of the risk of the project, of the startup mistake that you might commit. So you want to take that into account. And the customer discovery process, what you want to do is listen to the market, ask the right questions, open-ended questions, and from there, you're going to be able to get the information that you need to start drafting the process that you need to push. When you start the process, and now we're going to switch to the different steps that you have to take in EBELI to develop a high-impact venture in order to solve a complex problem of the world or your region. The first step you need to understand is who you are, and you need to understand the importance of the team. And these concept has been repeated over and over again in different scenarios and in different spaces that have to do with innovation and entrepreneurship. But unfortunately, we never pay enough attention to the importance of the team. You need a brilliant team that is going to help, at least at the beginning of the process, understand the problem, understand the customer, and develop the solution. And since it's very likely that you're going to be adjusting your business model, your idea, you're going to be pivoting at some point, it's more important to have a brilliant team than to have a brilliant idea, because you're going to need to have that group of people that helps you understand when it's a good time for a change, for a pivot, to hear the market and just understand that maybe what you were thinking at that time was not really a problem, or that problem doesn't have a good enough, big enough market to solve, or simply your solution is not the best way to go in order to tackling that problem or that need. And this goes directly to the thing that has to go with the investment process of the project. You need to demonstrate people that are going to be investing in the project, all the way from friends, family, and fans, all the way up to venture capital firms or even private equity, that you and your team have the capacity to carry out the project. So you need to take into account skills and experience, and how does everyone in the team individually contribute to the cause. This is going to be crucial, because you're going to need people that have very different skills, especially at the beginning of the process when you have a very small team and people have to do many different tasks at the same time. And you also need to understand how the team works, especially when you're thinking about very stressful and quick processes that need iteration all the time. So some of the things that you want to take into account probably are the different skills of the Future of Jobs report. There are so many information sources in the world, like the World Economic Forum. You can source also other different tools like Human Design probably, or like 16 Personalities, or the 4 Colors of Personalities. But the thing is that you need to make sure that the people that are going to be building the project with you are oriented to working as a team, but also that they understand perfectly well how they're going to be led, and also who's going to be supporting the leader, and understanding which way they can play a better role for the project, so that they can grow quickly and they can start developing better and more efficient experimentation processes in order to develop the MVP and then test it and then just launch it to market. The experience of the team is something that is sometimes very underrated. It's going to be crucial. It's not only about what you've studied in the university, it's also about of what you've done. It's very likely that if you pay attention to what you've done so far, you've done many different activities that don't necessarily sound like things that you might put in a resume or a curriculum, but maybe from there you can get very interesting information. One of the things that, for example, I can share with you is that in the companies that I work with, usually when we're doing recruiting, we give preference to people that have been competing in Olympic level or national level sports, because that usually guarantees us that they have the discipline to hustle and the grit that they need to pursue with the projects. And that's usually something that people, when writing a resume, for example, are not very conscious about. But those kinds of skills that you can develop from different activities, that is not necessarily just the typical education when you went through college, is also very important. Education obviously is going to give you the technical background that people need. So if you're going into technical things like the R&D of your startup, developing the product, or maybe things that have to do with legal stuff or accounting, you do need to take a very precise information about the people in your team, so that you're sure that they have the technical capabilities needed to push for the team. Once you understood who the team is going to be working for and with, you can take the next step and start thinking about your project. And one of the most important things that we want to share with you is that for many years now, basically everyone, consumers, businesses, and governments are used to getting services all the time. It's not really about products, it's about everything that goes around the product that you're developing. And that, if you change the mindset and you understand that people are used to getting services, that is going to give you a very different process of developing what you're trying to create. And the Jobs to Be Done theory by Clayton Christensen is probably one of the most effective ways to make that process of defining the problem or the opportunity that you want to tackle for your customer. You need to understand why your customer is going to accept the innovation that you're proposing and reject the thing, product or service that they're using at the moment. And that is crucial. You're going to be able to divide, once you start with the process, into three different parts. The job to be done, there are very particular circumstances that are going to allow you to understand if you're talking about a functional job to be done, if it's social or if it's emotional. But you need to pinpoint it very specifically so that you can take the next step and understand what's the most relevant part of the project. What interests an outside person that is going to be part, again, of your business model. And that might be the investor that is funding the project, the potential partner that is part of the key joint ventures that you're going to be working with, the benefactors, the incubator that is going to be helping you grow your project. But that's going to be crucial. The other part that you need to take into account is the market size. And that is going to be very relevant, because if you do not have a target market that is big enough to make it interesting for you and to give you the revenue that you need, then it's very unlikely that you're going to get the attention from people to support your product. Any kind of organization or institution that is part of the infrastructure of developing ventures, investors, incubators, services firms are going to want to have a client or a person that they can work with that has a very clear information about the market, but also that the market is relevant, that they have enough critical mass to make an interesting process. You also need to understand the process of the prototypes, the MVPs that you need to develop. And this is going to be crucial in the process because you want to take into account that the sooner you make the customer discovery, the cheaper the MVP development is going to be. If you learn a lot of information from your customer and from your problem, the problem that you're trying to solve, it's very likely that you're going to be able to create an MVP that is very efficient, that is very accurate, and that, if you do it at the point where you have enough information, is going to let you iterate less, de-risk the process of building the venture, and invest less money into pivoting stuff, going all the way, obviously, to the high fidelity. You need to take into account also that there are different metrics that people in the entrepreneurial world are using already. And these are very important because they are universal, meaning that if you get a specific number in one of the 3 tools I'm going to show you right now, everyone in the world is going to know the metric specifically. This one, the technology readiness level, developed by NASA, has to do, as its name explains, in how close you are to the market, going all the way from the idea in a napkin from TRL 1 all the way to TRL 9, meaning that you're already providing the market with your product. The same thing for the business readiness level, from obviously the business point of sight, and the investment readiness level from Steve Blank. You're going to want to understand the key features, and this is one of the things that usually gets entrepreneurs a bit stuck. There's a confusion between the difference of key feature and value proposition, and value propositions are crucial to the process. Those are the ones that are going to make the differentiation of your product or your service in the market, but value propositions come out of the key features. So it's very important that you're very much aware of what the key features are, because that is going to dictate basically what you're going to have as value propositions. And finally, key metrics. Key metrics are going to be the numbers that people around the process of your project are going to be very interested in. These are some examples of the most relevant ones that you're going to have in any kind of conversation that you have with an investor, for example. So you want to take into account that these may not necessarily be the ones that you should be measuring. Likely that they will be, but even though if they're not, you need to understand what the key metrics of your specific project are, because you want to start measuring and gathering data as soon as possible, because that is going to give you the information that you need in order to continue the process. So we go to the first part of understanding everything that we have around the organization. And this, for this, we have this very accurate tool that is called the Systemic Canvas. And it allows you to understand all the environment and the context of your project. It's very useful because, as you can see, we gathered a lot of different tools like the SWOT analysis or the PESTEL or the context, and we got them all together in just 9 blocks. And we start with the project. Here, what you would be basically addressing is a very short sentence that summarizes your business model as a whole. And from there, you start to think about all the different trends that are going to be around your project. You need to understand everything that's going around your project and your customer, because that is going to have a direct impact on what's going on. And as you probably understand by now, there are going to be things going around in terms of social and demographic trends. The most recent and relevant one, I would say, for the last few years is mobile first. for example, understanding that everybody is trying to go to the smartphones and playing from there everything. And it's not necessarily a business understanding, it's more like the capability of just being connected to the internet all the time. And that would be important, because if you're going to develop anything that has to do with software, you need to understand that. And that is going to have a direct impact, obviously, with the customer segments that you're trying to tackle in your business model. The tech trends are going to be very important as well, because it's very likely that even though if you're not developing a deep tech project, you're going to have some kind of contact with technology. So it's very relevant to understand in terms of the specific problem that you're trying to solve, if there are any technological trends that might be of use, or that might be of relevance, or even a threat to your project. And that is going to have a direct, again, relationship with what you have to understand in your business model for the segments, the channels, the relationships with your customers, and the cost structure. Industry trends are going to be relevant as well. This is going to allow you to understand who all the other people that are around in your market area are doing so far. And that's going to have a direct impact in revenue streams and value propositions, as well as customer relationships and channels. And these, as you can see, are the different connections that are very relevant that you're going to see in EBELI, in evidence-based entrepreneurship and lean innovation, all the time, because we basically work with 4 canvases at the same time, and that allows us to connect the different building blocks of each of the different canvases and understand the precise impact that goes directly from changing one hypothesis in that specific box. Economic, regulatory, legal, and political trends are going to be very important as well. And that is going to give you all the other context around your process. And now I would say, especially in this year 2020, we can see that things that are going outside of tech trends industry and social and demographic trends are also very relevant to our reality that we live day by day. On challenges and opportunities, what we have there is basically what we need to understand as the problem or the need that we want to help our customer with, and that's going to have a direct impact in the value propositions and the customer segments that I work with in my business model. And that is going to be also directly related to my weaknesses and my strengths, because that, again, that is related to the team, is going to make me understand in the left side of the business model canvas, what are the key activities, the key resources, and the key partners I should be thinking of because I have X or Y weaknesses, or because I have X or Y strengths. And finally, the competition. And competition is going to be crucial because we need to understand competition from a different point of view. It's not what I compete against directly, it's all those other products or services that provide the same value proposition that I do. And that changes completely the way in which I should be understanding competition. Because to a point, if the problem that I'm trying to solve is being solved by some very basic technology, technique, or is not even relevant to my customer, then status quo might be my competition. That's why I need to start understanding competition from the value proposition point of view. And finally, it's going to be very relevant that I understand the way in which the different building blocks of the systemic canvas are connected. And that's going to apply, obviously, to all the other different canvases. It's not only about how I connect each of the boxes, again, inside the canvas, but also the way in which I connect them to other boxes of other canvases. At the second part of the process of building the business model, this is going to be very relevant, and it's going to be centered basically on the customer, on the client. And as you know, it's going to be crucial, because if you do not find a customer that has a relevant problem, it is very unlikely that you're going to be successful at your project. And that's how you can start your journey of developing the business model, and you'll do it probably with the business model canvas from Alex Osterwalder. You're going to start with the customer segment, understanding who are the groups of people, B2C, B2G, or B2B, that are interested in your product specifically or your service, and finding the way in which you can do the segmentation needed for the process. This is going to be relevant because you need to understand what are the basic criteria that you need to make these groups of customers. And the tricky part of the process is that in the process itself, you're going to understand what are the criteria that you need to apply to the segmentation, because each problem and each value proposition that you think for your customer is going to make you think of different ways to do the segmentation. In other words, the different criteria that you can use for customer segmentation is usually very different from project to project. Once you understood the problem, again, that you want to solve, you can start thinking about solutions. And that's when you start thinking about value propositions. And value propositions, and this is very important that you understand it from the beginning, are the benefits that you're going to be providing your customer. They are not the specific functions or needs that you're going to be solving. They are not necessarily the functionalities or the features that you're going to have in your project. They are basically the things that are adding value, giving benefits directly to your customer. From there, you go to the channels, which are the ways in which you can connect with your customer. And this is very important, there are 3 different types of channels, and you always need to understand that you have to connect the 3 of them. It's very crucial that you understand that it's very unlikely to have a business model that doesn't have all the check marks in all the boxes. And for channels, you're going to be thinking about sales channels, distribution channels, and support. For customer relationships, you're going to be thinking about different activities that you need to implement in order to have connection with your customer. And again, as in channels, it's going to be a process where you have the first step, which would be acquiring the customer, acquisition relationships, and then you're going to have loyalty processes with your customers so that you can be close to them. And then finally, you're going to have all the second part of the relationship processes of customer relationships, where you can grow the relationship, especially transactionally. And everything that you understand from the right side of the canvas, from the customer segments, the customer relationships, the channels, and the value propositions, is going to allow you to have a very clear understanding of the revenue streams, meaning the way in which you're going to sell or hire or allow your client to purchase or take advantage of your product, and also the amount of money, and if you're going to have a specific tactic, discount strategy, or anything that applies to the commercial positioning of your project. Once you understand the right part of the business model canvas, which, as you can see, is very close to the market, you need to start thinking about the internal ways in which you can implement the process. And for that, you have to start thinking about key activities, things that you need to start doing. And this, if you understand that the canvas is a strategic planning tool that allows you to do planning in real time, instead of only the first draft of your project and then just framing it and putting it on the wall. You're going to understand that key activities should be changing basically every week. Once you understand what you have to do in order to deliver the value proposition to your customer, you're going to want to start thinking about the resources that you're going to need in order to develop those activities and to deliver the value propositions. And for that, you're going to have 4 different types of resources: human resources, financial resources, physical resources, and intellectual property. And that's going to be also directly related to key partners. So if you understand what the key activities are and the key resources that you need to pull it off, you're going to start thinking also about the partners that you need in order to develop the product and to be able to deliver the value proposition to your customer. And that left side of the canvas, key activities, key resources, and key partners, is going to allow you to now think about the cost structure that you have to think when you're thinking about the viability of your project. And also, again, you need to understand how the different boxes are connected. You need to see that the strongest connection of the business model canvas is between value propositions and customer segments, but also all the other boxes are connected as well. And if you think from the design thinking point of view, you're going to understand that the right side of the canvas, value propositions, customer relationships, channels, and customer segments, is going to give you desirability. It's going to allow you to understand if the market is interested in solving the problem that you want to solve, and if the solution that you're proposing, if the value proposition that you're giving the market is relevant or not. On the left side of the canvas, key activities, resources, and partners, you're going to understand feasibility of the project, meaning that it's going to allow you to think if you have the capabilities that you need to deliver in order to deliver the value propositions. And then finally, on the lower side of the canvas, with the cost structure and the revenue streams, you're going to understand the viability of the project, meaning that if you make more money than you spend, it's going to be a viable business model. There are, and this is one of the beauties of EBELI, there are other different canvases that connect directly to the business model canvas, and this allows the entrepreneur to change from one canvas to another along with the process of customer discovery, depending on the need that they have, of the market that they're trying to tackle, of the value proposition that they're trying to implement. And if you start working with the business model canvas, for example, you can change to the basic canvas, which is the newer version of the lean canvas. And as you can see, you have the same boxes marked in yellow as the business model canvas, and then you only have a few new boxes in white. And that is a very relevant change in the process of developing a business model, because that means that you don't have to start from scratch. When you're doing the customer interviews, you are going to be hearing a lot of information that may want to make you think about pivoting not only the project or the product itself, but also the business model. And that's where you can change the canvas and just keep the boxes that are going to be the same as the ones that you were using, and just switch to the new ones. Challenges and opportunities, as you can see, is the same information that we had in the lower left part of the systemic canvas. So basically, by this time, you would have that already sorted out. Products and services would be probably something that you thought about before thinking about value propositions, and you had in the middle of the systemic canvas and when you were thinking about your project. So it's basically a description of what you're going to be doing. Metrics that matter, again, it's part of the project, as you can remember, and those KPIs and OKRs are going to be relevant so that you can keep on doing all the process. And then finally, the differentiation, which is like an accentuated way to think about value propositions. And again, there are going to be connections in the canvases. And here in the basic canvas, you're going to have very specific connections between the different blocks, and also from the blocks of the basic canvas, again, with the systemic canvas. The basic canvas is going to allow you, in case you're doing a very innovative project that is not necessarily something that has been seen before in the market, something that's going to allow you to move quicker so that you can start developing your idea. And these, again, are the different boxes that you can see in the business model canvas, the yellow ones, and the white ones, the ones that change from the basic canvas to the business model canvas. Impact canvas is a new way to understand social businesses. Again, what you see in the yellow boxes are boxes that you were using in the business model canvas. So you can move forward quickly with very specific stuff. In the customer segments, because you're thinking about probably a non-for-profit organization or something that has to do with social innovation, you're going to be adding the benefactor and the beneficiary, which you don't have in a business model canvas, but are very crucial to these types of projects. So the difference would be basically just adding two different roles in the customer segments. That would be meaning that by this time, you would not only have the decision maker, the payer, the user, but also you would be having the beneficiary and the benefactor. Impact factors would be something very relevant, especially when you're talking about topics related to circular economy, to donut economics, to sustainability, to sustainable development goals, and those kinds of things. So the impact factors would be relevant for this type of ventures. And you need to take into account that aside from the typical metrics that you have as a business, you're going to have impact metrics that you need to implement. And finally, the expertise. And this is going to be crucial because it doesn't mean that you shouldn't have expertise or don't pay attention if you have a traditional business model, like for the business model canvas. But for the non-for-profit sector and for the social business and the benefit types of organizations, it's very relevant to have a very clear understanding of your expertise. And you're going to have also, again, very specific connections that you have between the boxes. And the strongest ones here are probably value propositions with the customer segments, but also understanding the value propositions and the expertise. There's also another canvas specifically for public policy or for public services. So this would be the canvas that you should develop if you're working in a government or if you're trying to tackle a public problem that usually governments are implementing, like health maybe, or like mobility, for example. And again, we're gonna have here some blocks that repeat from the business model canvas, but others that are new to the process. And when we think about this, it's not only the beneficiary, which would be basically the citizens, but also stakeholders that are part of the project, usually organizations or people that are either part of the government or organizations that are part of the process that we're trying to support by developing the venture. They're very similar to customer relationships. We would be thinking of relationships and support, And again, this would imply not only the way in which we connect with them, but also the way in which there's a relationship with the different governmental or international organization elements or stakeholders that we need to connect with. There would be very specific execution channels, meaning that we wouldn't be selling, and but we would need to distribute and to support what we're doing. And then finally, objectives, which would be a very relevant part of the process that we're having as part of the process of delivering public solutions to citizenship. And again, there's going to be very important connections between the different blocks of the canvas, as well as the connections that we have from the public canvas to my systemic canvas and the other canvases that I have as I move forward with my project. For the third step, once that we understood the kind of project that we want to have, either a traditional business model, something very innovative, maybe something that has to do with more impact and not putting an important accent in the profit, or a public solution. Once I understood that, I can take a step forward and start thinking about ways in which I can make my startup or my project more exponential. And that, as you will see in the calendar, would be very relevant, because it's going to allow me operational efficiency, and it's going to allow me to move forward. This canvas was created by people who understand exponential technologies that come from the Singularity University world or sector, led by Salim Ismail. And you would start working with the massive transformative purpose, meaning that you should be able, if you're clear enough of what you want to achieve, of your purpose in the world as an organization, to phrase in one very short sentence something that explains clearly to the world why you're relevant and why you're doing what you're doing. And there are 10 different attributes, as you can see, that have to do with the development of an exponential organization. And I'm going to go through them really quickly. But the important message here would be that if you're trying to reinvent the organization you're working, basically the recommendation would be that you need to understand at least 4 of these 10 different blocks as part of the process of your innovation in the organization. But if you're starting a venture from scratch, it would be very much recommended that you think about the 10 attributes together, so that you can assure both your organization and your investors that you're going to be growing quickly. It's very likely that from now on, most organizations that are created that are willing to tackle global challenges, sustainable development goals, and big challenges around the globe are going to be exponential organizations, because that would be the only way to grow quickly, to support the people that you want to support, and have a very important operational efficiency that allows you to move quickly, cheaply, and with very much impact in your community. Staff on demand, as the name says, is basically trying to understand who you're going to be supporting your operations with, but that they shouldn't be a staff that you're paying for every day of the week, even though if you don't need them at the moment for a very specific thing. And that has to do a lot with creating a community around you and understanding who should be supporting what you're trying to achieve. And that's probably one of the reasons why the MTP is so relevant. Community means that you need to either create your own community or connect quickly with communities that might be already in place, that are interested in the same topic or problem that you are. And with that connection, you're going to be able to connect with that crowd, with those communities, and start very important synergies and interactions so that you can move quicker and they can support you in your process. Algorithms, as you know, are a very relevant part of our lives today. So it's very important that you start thinking about incorporating algorithms to your projects and your processes as soon as possible. Depending on the business model that you have, you might have the possibility to either develop something very algorithmic, like a platform or an app, or maybe developing something totally different, but you should be able to put algorithms into the operation so that you can have less risk in human operations, more operational efficiency, de-risking your project, moving quicker. So you need to take a look into that. Leverage assets, again, as his name says, it's very clear. It would be a kind of like stuff on demand, but with stuff. So you might want to start thinking about ways in which you can start leveraging different material resources that would be relevant to your project specifically. And that goes all the way from developing the MVP to implementing the business model. And finally, on that part of the scale part of the EXO canvas, we would be thinking about engagement. And these are all the different techniques that you have to implement in order to have the community engaged, to have the staff on demand motivated, and the different things that you need to do to have everyone participating actively and proactively in your venture. And that's going to provide you also with the type of information that you want to be tracking and understanding all the time, because that data is going to be crucial to the stuff that you want to do and you want to keep on doing moving forward. On the side of ideas, you start with interfaces, and this is crucial because you're going to be needing the different platforms in order to make connections. Now, as you know, technology is very cheap. There are so many different new technologies out there in the market with freemium models that it would be very relevant that you start thinking about using those types of technologies and understanding how you can put that in the process. Again, this should be part of the automatization of the process that you're trying to do. Because if you start thinking about automation, you need to start thinking about people really adding value to your project, and then just having the interfaces allowing you to connect the different things that you need to connect. That obviously would be directly related to dashboards. You need to be able to read information quickly so that in real time you can make decisions that have a direct positive impact in your business. And then, and this has to do a lot with the culture of your organization, you need to think about experimentation. You need to create a culture. You need to have a process embedded into your organization that allows you to test all the time what you're trying to do so that you can fail well and fail forward quickly. Autonomy, again, is going to be a crucial part of the process. It's directly related to the team that you're building for your project. It's very unlikely that you're going to be successful unless you create a team that has good dynamics and that is autonomous, that they can make quickly decisions and be accountable for that. And then finally, you're going to need an infrastructure that allows you to communicate quickly with one another. There are so many platforms right now in the market that can allow you to do that, and they are either free or very cheap, that it would be crucial that you can start thinking about implementing those in the process. And that's going to allow you to understand how the internal part of the process should be run. And as you can see, this part of the canvas, both the ideas and the implementation, is directly connected with the left side of the business model canvas, because again, it's part of your internal operations. When you finish the process of trying to design your business model, then you start thinking about all the other stuff that you need to be doing around the process of building properly your startup. And one of the first things that you're going to need is to understand the emotional intelligence of the team. This ability that is going to allow you to understand if the people that are part of the team are having the proper interpersonal behavior, because that is going to have a direct impact on the performance of the team. And that is directly related also to social intelligence. You need the team to share a vision, to have the added skills as a team, the willingness to be learning all the time, and the capacity to work in stress and uncertainty. Because usually the hardest part of creating a project is starting the project. So you're going to be very much into that at the beginning, and that is going to allow you to develop a culture of your organization. And the culture that you create in the organization, I would say, is something that is going to be super relevant moving forward, because it's the only way in which you can be sure that once you grow the organization, people are going to be doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're going to be having a shared purpose. They're going to share the values. They're going to understand the objective, and everyone is going to work towards the objective. And because of that, they're going to have the proper strategies and open communication so that operations run smoothly. You also are going to want to think about corporate governance. You need a system of accountability and transparency that allows you to focus on success in the long run. And for that, you need to develop a structure that is strong enough and flexible enough, and that is focused and committed enough so that you can give trust to your investors and your stakeholders. And that, in the long run, should give you operational efficiency so that you can make decisions in all these complex things and phases that you're going to be facing when starting the process. One of the typical questions that we get, it's one of the biggest concerns of when creating a company, is the incorporation part of the process. And we usually what we usually say is that you need to create the legal entity at some point. Shouldn't be the first step. You should validate the business model first. And you're going to need to understand all the needs and expectations of everyone in the process. You need to understand it as a place of operation, of sales, of hiring, of everything that you're going to be doing in your business model. But the most relevant question of incorporation of the entrepreneurs usually is, how do I divide the equity? And for that, I would say that we understand the equity as an exchange currency for the exchange of value that is going around the venture, meaning that at the starting point of the startup, you're not going to have enough liquidity to pay people with money, so you're going to be paying with equity. And that brings us to the quote that we have at the bottom of the slide, which talks about the transformation of the energy, meaning that in terms of a startup, people should be getting the equity percentage-wise that reflects the value that they're providing to the venture. Meaning that if we at some point decided that we're going to go, because we're two partners, 50 and 50, but my partner is doing all the heavy lifting and providing all the value to the company, and I am not supporting the operations and I'm not adding value to the company, there should be a change in the percentage that we have for equity. because again, equity should reflect the value that you're putting into the company. Finances obviously is going to be another important part of the process. You need to understand that finances is not the financial statements only. It has to do with the company health or situation. You need to understand how the cash flow is functioning, and in case it's not working healthy, you need to correct it immediately, because that's going to be basically the fuel that provides you with enough energy to continue moving forward and to grow exponentially. So every minute of your time has a monetary value, and every minute of the time of your team has a monetary value, and you need to understand that. Obviously, focus on customer acquisition. And the other one is that not because you're a startup means that you're going to be working for free. You need to at least start thinking about paying yourself, or measuring what you're working for free for the company, because that's value that should be captured and exchanged again for equity. Understanding the financial part of the business is going to be very relevant, especially when you're thinking about raising capital. So you might want to understand the different stages of raising money. And this is crucial because we see very often entrepreneurs trying to knock on doors of venture capital firms when they are at an idea stage, and that wouldn't obviously work because they have to go through different stages to go all the way to the venture capital. They need to show specific traction and maybe even some previous rounds. So it's very relevant not only that you understand all the process and the different steps for raising money, but also understanding how your own ecosystem works. Understand that the investor is your partner, meaning that they should have a very important interest in your company. It's not only about the money, it's about having the same business thesis as you have, because if they do not share the vision that you have, then it's very likely that it's going to be a huge mess. Another topic that is very relevant, especially when you're talking about startups from this century, has to do with intellectual property. And because usually IP comes from universities and research centers, it's very important that you have a clear understanding. If you're working with a researcher or an institution and you didn't develop the IP on your own, it's going to be very relevant to understand who owns what. And the other part is that you need to take a step forward and start protecting your intellectual property. It's not only about you being the person who created the thing in the lab or that wrote the code. It's also about going to the patent office or understanding the best way to protect it. Maybe it's an industrial secret, but there has to be a way, because that's the only way in which, first, you can capture value, and second, you can start raising the different barriers for trade for your competition. And finally, legal and tax. So you're gonna wanna pay a lot of attention into this. It's very likely that you're gonna need support from different or specialists, both in accounting, in legal, and all the process that you need to make a very transparent operation in your organization. So think about all the different contracts that you need to sign, the different laws that you need to fulfill, the different clauses that you need to think about when you're both hiring people, developing agreements with the shareholders, understanding how your board of advisor works, having a proper relationship with vendors or with distributors. So the more you look into this, which is one of the not really sexy parts of doing a startup, the better it's going to go your operation. You need to take into account that whatever is written in the papers that you work is going to be the way it works. It's not only about just promising stuff and thinking about how things should be. You should be thinking about applying these every day of the week. And then finally, when you've finished all the process of understanding how your team should work, defining the problem that you're going to tackle, designing your business model and validating it, and then going through all the process of building the team, building the culture, incorporating your company, creating the corporate governance, finding out how the marketing, commercial, legal, accounting, etc. processes, raising capital, and you already start traction, you go to the scaling canvas. And this is one of the most amazing tools I found when creating traction for organizations. As you can see, we have the scaling canvas divided by columns depending on the time frame. And what we have basically is rows depending on the specific topic. It's very important that you understand that this one-page tool allows you to do planning for the future in one single page. So again, if you're able to use the systemic canvas, the canvas for business modeling, either the business model, the impact, the public, or the basic, and then finally the scaling canvas, with only 3 tools at your disposal, you would be able to do strategic planning while you're operating a company, which would be very relevant, especially again, because when you're operating a startup or operating a scale up, it's very difficult to have the time to think about the vision and about the future. So you want to start using these kinds of tools so that you can start implementing some future thinking with your team at the same time that you're running a successful business. So by now, you should have a basic idea of what evidence-based entrepreneurship and lean innovation methodology is. I hope it was of use to you. This, as I was saying, is a tool that has been developed for the last 20 years by people that have ran very successful companies. People from all over the world pitched in. We're going to be releasing the book by the beginning of 2021 in Spanish and in English. And before summer 21, we're going to be releasing the book in French and Mandarin. There's also a platform in internet where you can find the methodology and you can start implementing it immediately. And that platform is called Canoe. So if you want to try it, it's been very useful. We have at the moment a network there that is very active of 7,000 approx users that are developing right now the business models. So if you want to try it, then maybe that would be a good experience for you, either developing a new startup or maybe creating a corporate innovation program. Or developing an innovation ecosystem. I'm very happy that we were able to share this with you. This has been an amazing journey. I want to take advantage of the time also and give thanks to the 300 custodians of evidence-based entrepreneurship and lean innovation. I'm very honored to be the vocal in this specific webinar of the methodology as part of Global Entrepreneurship Network and OpenExo. So thank you for your time, and I'm gonna leave the chat open in the next couple of minutes in case you have any questions. Yeah, thank you for your question. So regarding the custodians and the creators of the evidence-based entrepreneurship and lean innovation methodology, what I can share with you is that they are very much interested in not sharing who they are, because a lot of them are the people that have been pushing for the global entrepreneurial ecosystem, and they have their own methodologies. But what I can tell you is that from those 312 people, I think is the right number so far, they more than half of them have been serial entrepreneurs. More than half of them are lecturers or trainers or instructors of entrepreneurship in different programs and universities worldwide. We have people from around 46 countries, maybe a bit more. And the way in which they started sharing was basically, again, we started this entrepreneurship academy 20 years ago, and we started inviting some friends to give a lecture or to mentor someone, and it came to a point that we ended up becoming an interesting group of entrepreneurs that were just interested in giving back all over the world, especially trying to help emerging economies develop knowledge economy. But we also work a lot in the northern part of the world. I appreciate your time a lot. If you need any other information, if you're interested in getting the book, please reach out. You can find us in canoe.io, and we'll be more than happy to share with you the information. The purpose of EBELI is creating, again, social capillarity and knowledge economy. So if you're interested in doing that, just let us know and we'll be there to support you. Have a great day. Thank you.